Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular open meeting of Vesuvius Town Council, June 22nd, 2021 at 2 p.m. in council chambers. So first of all, we need a resolution to exclude the public, that in accordance with Ministerial Order M192, the Town of Vesuvius regular open council meeting continues to be closed to the public due to the inability to meet physical distancing recommendations made under the Public Health Act in council chambers located at 8707 Main Street, and that to ensure openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability, the Town of Vesuvius regular open council meetings will continue to be recorded, streamed, and published on the town's website, and that the regular open meetings be streamed on Eastlink's community channel. Councillor King, Councillor Harvey, all in favor. Thank you. Approval of agenda, late items, no late items, Mrs. Hilson, thank you. Could we have a motion to approve the regular open agenda, please? Councillor Bennett, Councillor Rhodes, all in favor. Thank you. And then the adoption of some minutes. They would be the regular open minutes from June the 8th, 2021. Councillor King, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. Thank you. You don't even have to put your hands up. I'm just picking two of you. So down to water matters. Look on here. So this would be Water Districts 8 and 9 financial accounts, and to report on expenditures from accounts payable for water councillors and council to receive for information purposes. So the cash requirements to June 22nd, 2021 are in the amount of $32,753.84. Councillor Morera is moving that. Councillor Appleby is seconding that. All in favor. Thank you very much. And correspondence. So the Okanagan Basin Water Board had a meeting on June 4th. The meetings, of course, are held on Zoom. There is a concern for potential drought. There has not been enough water up in the hills. The water from the snow has melted. And so there is, the Okanagan Basin Water Board has an Okanagan drought response strategy. And they will be sending out bulletins and bringing people up to date. It was done a couple of years ago in response to some of the other floods and droughts. So that's a good thing. The hydrometric stations, there used to be many of them that checked on water on various streams and so on, and it was agreed that a couple more would be added each year because they were just left and they weren't being used properly. So there are a couple of them. I think it's Pearson Creek, which is a tributary of Mission Creek, and Environment Canada is involved, and so is the OBWB and the Okanagan Nation Alliance. The milfoil program for the winter, the red rototillers have been finished for the season, but the other day I looked out and there was a green one. So that is a harvester. The harvester gives the haircut. In other words, it doesn't pull out the roots of the milfoil. It just cuts it below the surface so that it's easier during tourist season for people who are swimming and boating. So I'm pleased to see that they're out on our lake already. And the Make Water Work campaign and Don't Move a Muscle are in full swing. And you maybe saw the Make Water Work video that was done by me. And there were a few other mayors as well across the Okanagan. I just want to point out that you need to please go on to makewaterwork.ca, and all you have to do is register. And very interesting that when I was going to do this, because there is a prize for the community that has the most registration, and we've never won. We've come second a couple times, So I would really like us to win this year and not Armstrong again. Mayor of Armstrong phoned me the other day, wanted to know how I was feeling about Make Water Work. I said, we're gonna give it our best shot here. So please go on there. It's really easy. All you do is type in your name, your community, and we get credit. So makewaterwork.ca, because we all need to be conscious of how we're using water. Okay, and I think that's it for the Okanagan Basin Water Board. So could I please have a motion that the report be received and filed? Councillor Rhodes, Councillor Bennett, all in favor. Thank you. Staff reports. Mr. Davis is on there. This is the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. The second round of Canada Healthy Communities Initiative grant is open. The deadline to get the application submitted is June 25th. Staff has developed the grant application to install a scent garden at Pioneer Walkway, provide free Wi-Fi in a number of parks, including Pioneer Walkway, the West Bench Dog Park, Gyro Park, Lyons Park, and to upgrade the 2 water fountains at Pioneer Walkway. In discussions with management, staff, and the Accessibility and Age-Friendly Committee, we're proposing to submit a grant to make improvements to Pioneer Walkway in a number of parks. A scent garden is a contained garden of flowers and leaves that allows visitors to enjoy a wide variety of sensory experiences. Visitors with special needs, including people who are visually impaired, would benefit and be able to enjoy nature. As part of the application, we have received quotes for the aforementioned items, and the application amount will be for $55,000. The grant would cover 100% of the project. The 3 main themes for funding are safe and vibrant spaces, improved mobility, and digital solutions. This project includes all 3 themes, and it will be an added attraction to the community. As part of the application, staff is requesting a council resolution to approve the project subject to grant funding. The Accessibility and Age-Friendly Committee has the scent garden on its list of projects, and if grant funding is not successful, this project will still be included for the future. The applicants will be notified in September to find out if they have been successful. The funding has to be spent and the project completed by June 30th of 2022. In terms of implications for the community, another beautiful attraction for locals and visitors to enjoy. It creates a serene area for people to sit and relax, and for people with disabilities to enjoy nature up close. Organizational, staff working to complete the application and the project if successful. Budget of $55,000. Significant dates, June 25th is the deadline to submit the application, June 30th, 2022 to complete the project. And in terms of sustainability, creating a sustainable space that will assist with the health and wellness of community members and visitors. And the options before council, number 1, for council to support the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative grant application for installing a scent garden at Pioneer Walkway, making Wi-Fi accessible in Pioneer Park Walkway, Gyro Park, Lyons Park, West Bench Dog Park, and to upgrade the water fountains at Pioneer Walkway. And option number 2 is for council not to support this grant application at this time. And staff is recommending option number 1. Pioneer Walkway volunteers have also been instrumental in getting this project off the ground.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Sounds like a wonderful project.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move option 1.
Thank you. And it's been seconded by Councillor Rhodes. Any other concerns or questions? Looks like there's a lot of paperwork to do. Was that you that had to do that?
It's all ready to go. It's all done. Just gotta
Yes. Send it
attach
in.
the resolution.
Good. Thank you very much. So I will call the question. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Davis.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the a regional district bylaw referral concerning Area A and Willow Beach OCP amendment and rezoning proposal. Ms. McKay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to provide information to council on OCP amendment and rezoning proposal being considered at the RDOS for the property commonly referred to as Willow Beach. So there's a link in your report that takes you to the RDOS website where additional information can be viewed by yourself, members of the public, or anybody watching today. Now, the proposed rezoning amendment would permit the development of 70 single-family lots in a strata development. The proposed rezoning would also permit secondary suites and or carriage houses, although I'm told that the individual parcel sizes are not large enough to accommodate carriage houses, but nevertheless. So actually the construction, we could see up to 140 residential units on the subject property. So a little bit of background, the subject property, also known as Willow Beach, has been previously been the subject of a number of rezoning applications over the 14 years, most recent of which was submitted in 2016 and ultimately closed in 2020 by the RDOS due to inactivity. The property is designated in a regional growth area under the South Okanagan Regional Growth Strategy, and the current electoral A OCP bylaw review is proposing to introduce growth area boundaries around this site. The property is affected by the floodplain associated with, pardon me, Suze Lake, and is the subject of a watercourse development permit and environmentally sensitive development permit areas, which are designated under the OCP bylaw. The referral request from the RDOS and the site plan for the proposed development are attached to this report for your reference. Servicing. So the regional district does not have any wastewater services in the area of the proposed development. However, the town of Suze did take some of the development potential of this property into consideration when designing the Northwest Sector Sewer Project in 2010. The town to provide a pressure connection for this property at the end of 95th Street at the north end of the lake, but would need to ensure that this development proposal is within the capacity limits of the Northwest Sewer Sector prior to allowing any connection to the system. Despite the fact that the referral sheet does state that the town of Suze provides water, sewer, and fire service to the site, the property is not in proximity to a rural domestic system. As such, the developer would need to extend our rural domestic system north from the intersection of 150th Avenue and 89th Street. The water system would need to be extended approximately 3.5 kilometers in order to service the proposed development. The rural water system has been designed to produce domestic flows only. Should the developer want fire protection for the proposed development, further system upgrades would be required, such as a reservoir, a boosting station, etc. Note that any upgrades related to the proposal would be borne 100% by the developer. Seeing that this development proposal for 70 single lots with the potential for up to 140 residential units, the town of Suze should not recommend this development connect to the agriculture irrigation system, as this system does not meet the treatment requirements for domestic consumption. Developer will need to enter into negotiations with the town of Suze for utility servicing that is water and sewer as part of the development process. So parkland. So the South Okanagan continues to experience an increase in visitors year after year. In order to accommodate the influx of visitors and also allow for residents opportunities to access the lake, we're striving to increase the public spaces on our lakefront wherever possible. To that end, it would be prudent to expand the proposed parkland to meet the demands for this type of activity. So basically, with the direct impact of COVID on tourism, it showed us, of course, you all know that outdoor activity is recommended, and we can offer a more diverse and natural habitat for everyone to explore. The areas also provides us with an opportunity to create linkages to the RDOS trail system, bridging the linear pathway to Oliver and ultimately the South Okanagan. Despite the fact that I'm recommending that we advise the RDOS that to possibly increase that parkland, I've also been asked by the applicant that I remind council at this time that the requirement for under the Local Government Act has been satisfied. The 5% parkland dedication, that's a requirement under the Act, has been satisfied with this proposal. Implications to the community. Residents, of course, of Suze and the surrounding area always benefit with additional parkland. Council's comments would be forwarded to the regional district. There are no impacts to the town's budget at this time. However, should the municipal boundaries of the town of Suze be expanded in the future, To include this area, the town would benefit from additional tax revenues that would help in offsetting the initial cost of providing services to the area. Significant dates, comments, and submissions to the RDS are required by the end of this month. Sustainability, the regional growth strategy speaks to sustainability and the use of green building practices for new developments. So it's very straightforward on the referral sheet, which I would attach in this report. It does say the options that are afforded to council, along with other agencies that are receiving the referral, are as outlined here, either approval recommended for the reasons outlined, interest unaffected, approval recommended subject to conditions, or approval not recommended due to reasons below. So, our approval sort of recommended, subject to consideration of considering expanding the public beach area to allow for more visitors and locals to access the north end of the lake. And also that pursuant to section 13(1) of the community charter, the regional district consent to the town of Vesuvius providing municipal services, that is water and sewer, to the subject property on terms, conditions to be negotiated between the town and the owner. And there was one other comment that I was asked to make, and that is that I have spoken to the planner of the regional district, and they are satisfied with the proposed parkland dedication. I'm not sure if CEO Chabot had anything you want to add at this point.
No, not really. Your worship, certainly would be in order for council to ask that they consider a larger public park and beachfronters. No harm in asking. We wouldn't have a role in negotiating the terms under which that would be obtained. But if council believed that was an important aspect, could certainly ask. We indicated they're not interested in providing more. The site does have its own particular constraints.
So my concerns are that, and I'm glad to see that it's subject to a water course development permit and environmentally sensitive. I was on a conference call last week with the Water Stewardship Council, and we were discussing flood control of Okanagan Lake and the Okanagan Basin Agreement, the regulation system, which is all being looked at. And the concern with is changing climate in our area. And according to Brian Guy, who was presenting on this, who's an engineer, has been involved for a long time, the flood mapping report shows that lake levels will be much higher and higher flood flows over the next many years, which is partly why the Okanagan Basin Water Board and the dam operator in Penticton, Sean Reimer, is looking to redo the whole Okanagan Lake flood mapping proposal, because they need to have a better plan on what's going to happen in the future. And there are deficiencies according to ECORA, which did a study on the Okanagan Lake Dam. And my concern is that this area at Willow Beach is in a major floodplain. And it really concerns me to think that 70, perhaps 140 houses might be put in there, whether you have water, sewer, fire protection or not. My concern is what's going to happen to the whole water system, because we can't just separate Vesuvius Lake or Okanagan Lake. We're one valley, one water. And I find the whole thing very concerning, and that's my concern about it. Go ahead, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor Porto. When you look at the layout of the proposal, right beside the park there's a hashtag area, and it says it's really, really hard to read on that. It's kind of worried what that is. And I know that we don't have any real say in the percentage of parkland on the development, but certainly we can make recommendations based on what we do here. I'm wondering if some of that might be available. I'm not even sure what it is or what the purpose would be. It looks like we're taken out and then the hash marks were put in there. And I can't read the legend on the side. It's all blurry.
If
Thank you very much, Councillor Rhodes. If Mrs. Hilson could pull up the PDF, I could probably read it for you, but it's actually a road reservation. So that is what it's, that it is actually on that map that you're seeing in the hashtag. You can just look there, Mrs. Hilson. You can just see it.
There's offsite open space, parcel, regional district of Okanagan, so it might be
Maybe
What
a
it says
storage,
there.
storage area.
Yeah.
maybe.
Open space park. Oh, the one above it,
this,
or below it, that hashtag.
and then there's a legend is over here.
Your RBOS
Yeah,
has a copy of
offsite
the
Open
bike
space.
trail, the old KBR, that has been designated. as a bike trail.
That's probably what
Correct.
that is. It's a piece of.
Like a road reserve, yeah.
But the
For
RUS
the
could
trail.
potentially add to the park.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking,
Right,
depending on what the overall purpose of that hashtag area there,
right.
the hash marked area. Maybe we could recommend that that be turned into total park, because it is part of the KBR. You know, what difference it would make, and, you know, maybe. So I don't know what the provincial standard is, I know the regulation is 5%. But if we were to say 40% would be ridiculous, but is there variations of that, like is 7 acceptable or 10 or?
So that's, thank you, Councillor, it's an interesting question, so, it's along the lines of, what is a reasonable amenity for the rezoning of a property? Well, we've talked about this before with, properties within the town of Sears. In this particular case, it looks like that road reserve, as Councillor Bennett points out, was part of the trail. I'm gonna call it a road reserve. It's not that they've certainly met the requirements of the 5%, as you point out. And as mentioned, the RUS planner is advised that they feel that they've met the requirements. And I don't disagree with that they have legislatively. It's just something to consider, even if the regional district board chooses not to go down that direction. It just puts us also on notice of the fact that there's very little public access to the lake at the north end of town. Certainly no access on the east side, and very little as you traverse up from the north end of town all the way along to the north end of the lake. There's very little opportunity because it's all predominantly agricultural land, less likely to be developed in the future, less likely to have to meet the requirements for parkland dedication.
Thank you. If we haven't learned anything else, our experience in our community is the time to deal with park matters is in the development process at the very beginning, not as an afterthought or later,
Yeah.
because it never works out until after that. And I just, you know, in our community and the surrounding areas and that kind of thing, there is a lack of parkland, public parkland that can be used. And I think that we should promote as much as we can with any development that they might have any influence on. That's kind of where I feel about it.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey has a question.
Comments and question maybe. So it seems to me that this is dead in the water, absent sewer and water connection from the town, which gives us leverage. But so my concern nonetheless is, I mean, some comment in here about the northwest sector sewer, that it was taken into account. My concern is overall sewage treatment. Ultimately, everything ends up by the golf course. And we're already stressed, and adding 140 more houses. And while at the same time, we're looking at boundary expansion in other sectors, which may be more desirable on the whole to this council, maybe not. I think we cannot look at this in isolation of all other potential expansion or connection with the OIB, which they're after us about. It has to be looked at holistically, in my view. And then finally, a clarification. whilst it says in here the developer would pay for all water and sewer connections, capital expenses, under budget, under implications in budget, the comment is, if the boundaries were to be expanded to include this area, the town would benefit from additional tax revenues, which would help offset the initial cost of providing the services, which suggests that the town of Vesuvius will bear the costs of providing the services, which conflicts with my understanding of what the rest of the report says in that regard. So my question is, which is it? Is the town paying for it, or is the developer paying for it 100%?
As I understand it, there's already been some contractual events take place prior to this applicant coming forward, so it's, we only just kind of feel like we opened up a little bit of a can of worms, if I may say, as a fair statement. Stephen Chabot?
Yeah, your worship, the limited view that we've had of things since seeing the referral report indicates there's different factors and considerations at play, that certain agreements were struck with respect to development of this property and capital contributions, allocation of serviceable units, and the need to negotiate serviceable units above and beyond that and on what terms. It's complicated. I don't think we're here to debate infrastructure servicing, but it is a consideration for council as they make a referral response on whether or not this is an appropriate land use. Do make a good point that there's a finite capacity to the town's infrastructure systems and their design that needs to be taken account of in these things. Keeping in mind that the proposal here right now is a down zoning from current zoning in the RDOS that permits even more units. That was all along, or at least since agreements were struck in 2009 and maybe even sooner, anticipated the town providing services on some terms to this parcel of land.
And just in clarification to the I think offsetting any costs, any fees that were collected are being held for possible connection to services for the area were taken some time ago when the fee for those services was significantly less than it is now. So that's what I mean, but it's quite complicated how we'd have to disentangle the servicing of the site.
So I asked Mr. Zackel how, where we were at with this. At this point, there are 15 sewer hookups and 1 house, which is further along there. There are no user fees being collected.
For
So,
water.
pardon?
For water.
Right, for water.
We'd like to use your fees.
Yes, yeah, that's what I meant for water. So they did have, I remember when there was a lot of people camping out there in trailers and that type of thing. There was a well out there that they used for the previous owners that they used for water. Do you recall that?
Yeah, yeah, it was wells. I think got three or 4 wells out there.
Okay. So there is no water hookup there now. Well, of course, because we don't have, I'm not sure where the water runs to, the one.
The report says it's 3.5 kilometers south of there.
Okay, but there's no, but then there's just the 15 plus 1 house for the sewer at the moment. I'm not sure what their report says. It's a tricky thing, but it obviously has to go back to the regional district for them to have a look at and obviously be brought back to the board. Councillor Rose.
Well, I think in whatever choice we make, a sewer capacity study that is unique to that area would have to be done before we give any kind of commitment to. But we have done a sewer capacity study since 2010, and I'm wondering if maybe there's something in there that could help us work through that. I know when we put the sewer line on Lakeshore Drive, down the center of the road, that was our main referral document that helped us understand whether we would be able to handle it. So I don't know, maybe there's some information in there that might.
There was a design brief that Terry Underwood prepared for the town in 2012 that was inconclusive with respect to excess capacity in the sewer system expansion to that area and what other parcels might have an entitlement. Almost looked like it was going to become first come, first served for excess capacity in that system. So like we say, it's got a lot of component parts to it.
Yeah,
That's gonna be a fairly detailed conversation needing to be held with the developer, but really it's more about the land use and the zoning amendment, the OCP amendment to prevent this
Correct.
proposal. Servicing
I've got
between the
a
town and
report on my desk that I found in 2016. It's on sewer capacity.
And
Okay,
Yeah.
there's lots of reports.
Yeah, I know, there's tons of them. Go ahead and then it will be Councillor Harvey.
So I'm just thinking that if the goal of the developer is for us to provide sewer and water to them, then we have to be an integral part of the development. Because if we say, no, we can't do it because we don't have the capacity, then they have to look at other options. That's the only reason why I'm thinking that.
And there may be certain entitlements already with ancillary commitments that follow upon certain things happening that we need to understand.
right,
And those should be included in whatever information we give back to the regional district. That's my opinion.
I'm not sure they want.
Well, if they don't adopt the zoning amendment, the OCP amendment, then
Yeah.
we're just spending our time and our money for no particular end on this proposal.
So Councillor Harvey, you had a question?
Well, I was going to say that if council is going to approve recommending, subject to the 2 points, that we add a third point, C, which is our capacity overall. And I mean, to me, it's like squeezing a balloon, or as Alan said, or CEO Chabot said, it's first come, who gets on first to use up the excess capacity. And we ought to take control of that and decide who we want to be on first, to take that capacity if it's that limited. So I think we need a subject to capacity studies funded by the developer.
Does that make sense, Mr. Chabot?
Well, I'm not sure that that isn't kind of already in there. The second recommendation is to provide water and sewer to the subject property on terms and conditions to be negotiated between the town and the owner. And that would be subject to the town's satisfaction that there is sufficient capacity to meet this demand, to treat wastewater, to supply domestic water. It's not, this isn't a carte blanche approval and come and apply for as much as you want or need. It's that you're going to have to work with us and negotiate the terms.
Does that make
So
sense?
I don't know if that makes it any
Councillor
more
Harvey?
comfortable or not.
No, in fact, to me, it does not. I think we need to give them clear visibility to the regional district that this is an issue. And because I don't know what other conversations are going on. None of us do, except for the principals who are having the conversations. But this is our response back to them, this piece of paper and these 2 bullets. And to me, the second bullet does not clearly include capacity issues. It says, provide services subject to terms and conditions. And to me, that's contractual language. Terms and conditions are usage, rates, blah, 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 blah. I think to be totally transparent, we need to say more.
So,
Could we add capacity, look at capacity issues in that statement?
well, the terms are that we'll be able to deliver you this many units of service. Keeping in mind that certain entitlements may or may not already accrue to this property that need to be taken account of.
So we need to look at that too. Councillor Appleby, did you have a question?
No, I'd just like to express that I'm in favor of what Brian Harvey's saying. I know I'm only supposed to speak on water, but and water may be in short supply. We aren't going to build 7 more wells for free if we need to do that with an increasing population over the next 20 or 30 years. And the capacity of the sewer, which seems to be sort of at its peak already. And I would think that the people closer to town around the lake, whether it be the east side or the west side, would be probably more welcoming to the present citizens of Osoyoos rather than somebody that's coming in way up the lake.
Got it. Is there some way we can add, water and sewer capacity into this recommendation?
Oh, I was turning to CO Chabot, but I would gladly give that a whirl. Yeah, sure, we could say, we could add it to be after town and owner inclusive of the preparation of any sewer and or water capacity studies that may be required to determine the town's ability to provide services. Something to that effect. Mr. Chabot? Did you think it would be cleaner as a third bullet?
I agree, we need to be we need to be kind of forceful here. We can't just use weasel words. We've got to make sure they understand that this is important.
Just to Mr. Chabot's point, however, there is
I
some
know.
inferred requirement, no, I shouldn't say requirement, on behalf of the developer, there is some inferral that we were going to provide services under some previously agreement.
I get it. Is there any way that we can put off sending this to the regional district until we're comfortable with all of the issues that are
There's a lot to research here, and a lot of it is speculative,
Yeah,
Your Worship. And if I'm the proponent, the owner of this property, I hear the council talking and being very conditional when I may feel that some entitlements has already been granted for whatever reason, things that I haven't researched, I'm gonna become quite concerned. Regional district gave an extension to the referral response time period already. It was supposed to be made the 28th. They'll proceed without a response from the town, if that's what you wish. Certainly council can add something. I would just be concerned about it being overly prescriptive in that it limits the ability to circumnavigate the landscape and the agreements that may already exist or promises that have been made.
I get it. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I sort of have to be, this is a referral. All we're doing is sending this referral to the regional district. They're going to make the decision. So we put whatever we want in here, make them aware of it. But if we're going to sit there and put something in there where this guy comes back and says, you promised in 2010 you're going to do this, now you're not going to do it, I might just go talk to the lawyer. Now I'm in against lawyers, Brian, but I think we have to be careful because they're just asking for a recommendation. That's what we're doing. But if we start trying to make demands, I don't know.
I get it. It is tricky. Go ahead.
About like C would just be reviewing our water and sewer capacity, something simple that kind of separates from the negotiations. Like just has a little bit more teeth, but doesn't really sink us in hard.
We could certainly, we can make whatever statements in here we want. As Councillor Bennett pointed out, we're asked to provide our comments as part of a referral, the same as we asked the RDOS or the ALC or Ministry of Transportation to comment on applications that come before us. So whatever comments council wishes to make in here would then be referred back to the RDOS planner and then become part of their package and report to the board.
Go ahead, CJ.
Well, I have to say COVID has made me very compatible over the last little while.
Especially today.
Especially today.
Yeah, so I don't view due diligence as a demand. And I think it's important that we do due diligence in this and everything that we do, because we will be the provider of essential services for that particular area. So it's water, sewer, fire protection. And I think that from the beginning, we need to do that. Not just, and this is somewhat different than a lot of the other changes of referrals that we do back and forth with that, because those don't come with providing services like we're being asked to do right now. And when you couple that with the fact that we're uncertain what our commitment was in 2010 or 12 or whatever happened in that area, it's important for us to make these a part of our due diligence when we're going through this process.
So I wasn't quite sure what you meant by that. So are you saying that we should be adding a third comment and just showing that we're going to do our due diligence?
Yeah, I can see that as being a demand to me as part of the due diligence. that we do.
I know. Okay, Bob, did you have a question?
I just have one more comment if I can. As you mentioned, Mayor McCordoff, this area is in floodplain and the floodplain is supposed to expand over the next several years according to the information that we're given. And would it be smart for us to be part of or take over
Why
the
do you
due?
have your thumb over the camera?
That's a stove.
Oh, it's your toe. You were making a great picture for us to look at. Go ahead, Councilor Appleby.
So here's, why would we want to take over a water sewer system and the increased maintenance if it's in a floodplain and it's damaged, you know, every year, every third year, whatever the case may be, by flood?
It's possible, Councilor Appleby, that some of the things have already been put in motion. So that's what we need to be very careful of and look back and see what exactly was promised at what point. Whether they build there and there's floods has nothing to do with us, but
No,
yeah.
it does. What I'm saying is it does have something to do with flood, because if we have to rebuild, clean out, whatever, the system that's installed, then that's going to come down as a cost to the taxpayers in general. But it'll only be because of that specific area being non-compliant or whatever you want to call it.
You're right. So that's why this is a pretty tricky issue. So can we leave this? Are you, council, are you comfortable with letting McKay and Mr. Chabot you massage this a little bit and to include the concerns that we have? Because I'm not sure that they have the exact wording for what needs to go in there right now.
Your worship, we would entertain whatever council wants to add now, whether it's helpful or not. You know, a lot of these comments would be great if we were at the beginning point of a request to service these properties. We're halfway there. Sewer is already there. And what its capacity is and its ability to serve beyond entitlements and what other commitments have been made. It's going to take some time to unravel. And it needs to be gone about carefully, cautiously. If I'm the developer, I'm listening really closely right now.
So, but the developer also needs to know that we have, if he is listening, that we have huge concerns about several things here. And that's
And
important.
there's ways to properly design your water and sewer system so that your sewer system isn't trying to pump the lake and your water system isn't getting the infiltration of
Yeah.
groundwater, et cetera. All important considerations, all things for the developer to handle, because we're going to deliver bulk water to the edge of the strata development. And we're going to pick up the sewer at one edge of that same strata development and then deal with it.
That's correct, and thank you, Mayor McCord. If I may say, thank you, CEO Chabot, just to add on to that, the fact that it is in an area it has been identified as a floodplain area and environmentally sensitive area, and those development permits will take into consideration the servicing constraints or challenges with respect to being a floodplain.
Huge area of land being designated for conservation, and perhaps
Yeah.
ducks unlimited or something as well that we haven't discussed, which conveys an environmental benefit. I forget what size that area is. It's like 20 some hectares.
That's correct.
it shows on their map if you go onto the,
Yeah,
to
that's
the
blue.
tab, RDOS.
Yeah.
Across the area,
There's quite a lot of protected area up there.
which is something to be thankful.
The, yes, the oxbows are still, are also being re-looked at again. It's gonna take a long time, but some of the parts have been, because it was a natural barrier to silt and everything. It was a 45 kilometer from the end of Okanagan or Skaha Lake to Esuias Lake, which now has been channelized down to 24 kilometers. So there's a lot of talk about this right now. And they're really looking at trying to make sure that some of the oxbows get back in place, because it's a natural filter for things and it's home for wildlife and everything else. So, all right, so council, are we going to approve this with the recommended motions, but perhaps some a little bit stronger wording if we can on the water and sewer capacity issues?
And maintenance.
Sorry,
I say and maintenance.
no, I don't think we're looking at maintenance right now, are we?
Well, the mains we will maintain, of course, as part of providing the service if
Right.
it's provided.
Yeah.
But internal to the development is strata.
Yeah.
But we'd be mindful, I mean, if they weren't maintaining it and we were trying to pump the lake to the lagoon by the golf course, we'd say, you ought to do something.
Can we just say we have concerns about capacity, something simple, one little 3 words or something?
Maybe the word
Council wants to make
capacity
the
was added in there in some form. Would that work?
It says,
If I may, Mayor, Mrs. Hilson has put a point C. We've crafted one on the side here.
All right,
Mrs. Hilson
would you read it?
would
to
like
us?
us to give us those words there, something to the effect.
We don't know. Papers.
That's a good point. So as CEO Chabot and Mrs. Hilson were just noticing there, is that it is difficult because we don't know about further review of the documents that were part of a previous agreement, what has been agreed to with respect to any capacity reports or studies,
Wasn't titled.
entitlements. Thank you.
I think they still just say we have concerns about capacity.
Also,
It doesn't really say anything, it just identifies we have concerns.
so that a review be completed of the town sewer and water capacity studies to ensure that the town has the ability to provide water and sewer to the development.
Anything like that, I think is fine. Is that okay, Bob?
Is it my turn again?
Yep,
Okay, I'm just, this property changed hands again in the last 3 or 4 years, if I am not mistaken. And
several times.
why would an agreement that the town made or information that the town gave to somebody that owned it previously still be in vogue today? If I buy a car from somebody and I sell it to the next guy, then there's no guarantees coming with it.
That's part of the complexity and the legal servicing puzzle that we need to unravel to get to the bottom of to understand.
Yeah, but the
nature
first,
of it. Sometimes when you purchase entitlements for property, to service it, you register those agreements against title to the property. And then the benefit of that agreement transfers to subsequent owners for their.
well, I'd be
use.
interested to see if that was actually in the papers that went from one owner to the next.
Well, that's what we don't know, and that's why it's difficult to have this conversation.
So we can certainly look at that.
It needs to be looked at, we said it's complicated.
Councilor Rhodes?
Thank you, Member Coroff. I'm happy with the wording in number C.
Okay.
I think that gives us a statement that's definitive. It's reasonably friendly. It's not, it's not picking a fight with somebody or anything like that. But just on a, little bit lesser note, I'd also like something in there about the park part as well. I don't think we really finished that.
That's in part.
It is
A.
Yeah, but I'd like to see it increased, I know it doesn't really mean
This
anything.
is about the beach area.
So, thank you, Councillor Rhodes, if I may, Mayor McCullough. What I put in here as a suggestion to council was that the town of Seuss recommends that consideration be given to expanding the public beach area to allow more visitors and locals to access the north end of the Seuss Lake. And as I see it, I think there's an opportunity to allow the public access to the light green shaded area. I understand that that area has been reserved as private beach for all residents in the strata. If you look further into the information provided on the link. But I think this just is a suggestion to the RUS that they consider that.
Also consider the use of their area, the parcel they have, part of the old, we think was KBR.
That's correct.
For that use as well.
Does that have to go in the motion? Yeah, well, I'll move staff recommended option with the inclusion of
Let's
the C.
Seconder, Councillor Bennett, seconding that. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. One more question, just,
Okay,
it kind of expands the public beach, it doesn't specifically say park, so maybe beach and park, maybe the word park should go in there also? Or slash park?
Beach and park area.
Yeah.
How about we say that?
sure. Now, is this on this, is this a vote for Mrs. Hilson for all 7 of us or just 5 council? I ask for a vote.
That's a good question.
I would think that water council could vote because there's a potential for water matters.
Rural water, are you agreeable with that, everybody? Yeah, I don't either, I don't have a problem. All right, so the recommended motion with number C added, all in favor?
The number
Opposed?
C added.
Yes, number C
See,
added. that's
what
what
did
she
number
said.
C say?
C say,
Oh, that
C
was-
says,
that's-
C
okay,
say.
that's fine.
Okay,
Can I?
so, is there anyone not in favor of that
I
motion?
wasn't sure if that.
Okay, are you?
No.
Oh, okay. Did you want to add something to this?
No, I wanted
issue?
to see if you knew when this is at the regional district thing, and you're sitting there, is this a rural situation or will we be part of that voting process on
I
it?
don't know.
I'm sure we contribute to the planning function, which is what gives us the ability to vote
Right.
on planning matters and then get
Right.
referrals.
But usually what happens at the regional district is you have 2, it's either everybody or it's a rural vote,
Yeah,
where board members like mayors and that do not vote on it.
The town of Vesuvius is a participant in the planning function.
correct,
so maybe there is. So you
we
know
gotta
what?
vote.
correct.
How would they?
And it may be a while before it even comes. There's other issues that
No,
it's
it's
coming
going
right
away.
away.
That's
It's on the agenda for next meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Why we're here today.
I'm just thinking that the consistent representation at the board level would be very important for us, so it's that coming out soon.
You know what? Even on things that are a rural vote, sometimes I speak on it. I think
Of
you do
course.
too. So
Right.
we can, whether they count our vote or not,
Right.
we can have a say.
I don't have any memory of one individual municipality being pulled out and say they could vote on it. Usually it's all
All
one or the other,
or rural, yeah.
or both.
If I may,
Whoever's a service area participant.
a service area
regional district.
participate, correct. If I may, Mayor
Yes.
McCarthy, as well, is that this particular development area, potential development area has been a big area of conversation for the Regional Growth Strategy Technical Advisory Committee, of which I am a member. So that is a committee that's made up of all of the directors of planning and all the sister municipalities within the regional district. And it's very interesting to hear the diverse comments at those meetings and sometimes somewhat opposing comments. So
Absolutely.
it's very interesting. And it's not just with this particular area, it's with other areas that are a sort of a satellite growth areas outside of municipalities. So we're all sort of struggling with this right now, so it's not limited to just this area. Thank you.
So we're done, we're okay with that one? Okay, thank you. Next is the alternative approval process, AAP boundary expansion. And Mrs. Hilson, are you giving this report or is Mr. Chabot?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Town staff have been working on the proposed boundary expansion of 8 subject properties, 5 on 87th Street and 3 properties on 45th Street since April of 2019. At the regular open meeting of April 19, 2021, council passed the resolution below. The rationale for the proposed extension relates to the development of contiguous town boundaries, and the town of Vesuvius is already providing domestic water and sewer to the properties on 87th Street. The properties also benefit from receiving the following user fees or taxable services from the town of Vesuvius: fire protection, recreation services, access to the Vesuvius sanitary landfill and cemetery. Inclusion into the town boundaries will enable these properties to receive sewer services at a rate lower than sewer services available to properties located within the RDOS jurisdiction. The properties on 45th Street, with the exception of the property located at 5017 45th Street, would be able to access domestic water and sewer from the town at a reduced rate and receive the same user fee or taxable services as the properties on 87. The property at 5017 45th Street is connected to both the town of Vesuvius domestic water system and the sanitary sewer system. Recent correspondence with the property owners on 87th Street have determined that 4 of the 5 properties are not in favor of their properties being annexed into the town of Vesuvius boundaries. The rationale provided by some of the property owners was that they do not require the services that the town provides at this point. The town did upgrade the water system to these properties in 2017 with a twin domestic water service to provide potable drinking water. The town received requests from the 3 property owners on 45th Street to annex their properties into the town of Vesuvius. Due to COVID, there were delays at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs that prevented the boundary expansion to move forward. Town staff have worked with the ministry to expedite the boundary expansion during the last several months. At the regular open meeting on April 13th of 2021, council passed a resolution for staff to bring back a report that outlines the next steps for boundary expansion via the alternative approval process. The 2 statutory requirements for the boundary expansion to proceed are as follows. Public notice of the proposed extension published once in the BC Gazette as per section 12(2)(b) of the Local Government Act. An approval of the electorate is a precondition of the municipal council request for boundary change, and that's as per section 12.2(c) of the Local Government Act. Approval of the electors can be obtained by alternative approval process or by referendum. Most communities use the alternative approval process for minor boundary extensions because it takes less time and costs far less than a referendum. Section 86 of the Community Charter requires the town to publish a notice of an AAP process in accordance with section 94, public notice. The notice of the AAP will be posted on the public notice posting place at Town Hall, and advertisements will be placed in the Times Chronicle for 2 consecutive weeks. In order to be successful in obtaining elector approval via the AAP process, less than 10% of the electors of the town must petition the town not to proceed. If more than 10% of the electors petition the town against proceeding, council and if council would still like to advance the proposal, it must seek approval by the electors by referendum. Owners of the properties proposed to be annexed do not get a vote on the matter in either process, but their views on the matter are sought and provided to the province as part of the boundary expansion process. So the total number of electors has been determined to be 4,313 eligible voters. This was obtained by using data from the 2016 census. So the Stats Canada 2016 census profile was there was between the ages of 15 to 64, there was 2,265, 65 years and older, 1,845, 85 years and older, 290, which is a total of 4,400. So the breakdown of the age group of 15 to 19 years old is 145, according to the above stats information. This would mean there's approximately 58 people aged 18 to 19 in the Vesuvius. Below is the approximate adjusted numbers of eligible voters in the town of Vesuvius. So 18 to 64 would then be 2,178, 65 years and older, 1,845, and 85 years and older, 290, which brings us to a total of 4,313. Section 86.3 of the community charter describes the manner that the elector response form can be designed. The elector response forms can be designed to allow for only one single elector response or multiple elector response forms. Staff are recommending that council move forward with the multiple electoral response. Section 83B2 of the community charter requires that the elector response be available to the public at the municipal hall from the first time of publication until the deadline. The deadline for receiving elector responses forms as per section 83A of the community charter is at least 30 days after the second publication of the notice in the Times Chronicle. The number of elector response forms required to prevent council from moving forward with the boundary expansion is 431. If this number is met, or if the number of forms exceed 431, council would need then to move forward with a referendum if they so choose. Staff are suggesting breaking the two different areas, so 87th Street and 45th, into two different AEP processes. This will ensure if the community is not in favor of annexing one area of the proposed boundary extension, that the other one may still proceed if voters are in favor. Attached for council's consideration are two different newspaper advertisements, two different copies of notices to be placed in the BC Gazette, and two different elector response forms. After the deadline, the corporate officer must determine and certify whether electoral approval has been obtained. The corporate officer will review each submission that was received before the deadline and determine that the electoral response form has been filled out correctly. The form must include, to be signed, have the person's full name and residential address, and if applicable, the address of the property in relation to which the person is entitled to register as a non-resident property owner. Once the AEP process has been completed, staff will forward the results to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. The ministry prepares letters patent to implement the proposed boundary change if the corporate officer has certified that elector approval has been obtained. As per section 12 of the Local Government Act, the Minister of Municipal Affairs will refer the municipal boundary request to the Lieutenant Governor. Final approval is done by the Executive Council, Cabinet of the provincial government, and if received, the ministry will notify the town, the regional district, other ministries and agencies such as BC Assessment and Land Titles that the municipal boundary extension has been approved. So options before council is that staff proceed with two separate alternative approval processes of the electors for an extension of the town of Esoy's municipal boundary in order to annex the following properties. So on 45th Street, the boundary AEP process would be lot 10A, district lot 43 and 100 Similkameen Division Yale District Plan KAP 1958, except Plan H95, otherwise known as 5221 45th Street. PIV 003386091. Second would be lot 1, district lots 43 and 100 of Similkameen Division, Yale District Plan KEP 36420, otherwise known as 5037 45th Street, PID 003453961. And finally, lot 2, district lot 100, Similkameen Division, Yale District Plan KEP 36420, otherwise known as 5017 45th Street, PID 003454592. And for the 87th Street boundary process, AEP process, first lot A, district lot 2450S, Similkameen Division, Yale District Plan 22765, otherwise known as 9211 and 9209 87th Street, PID 006736939. Lot B, district lot 2450S, Similkameen Division, Yale District Plan 29887, otherwise known as 9215 87th Street, PID 004141041. Next, lot A, district lot 2450S, Similkameen Division, Yale District Plan 29887, otherwise known as 9223 87th Street, PID 004141016. Fourth, lot 1, district lot 2450, Similkameen Division, Yale District Plan 4838, otherwise known as 9227 87th Street, 010431659 as the PID. And finally, lot 1, district lot 2450S, Similkameen Division, Yale District Plan KAP 60712, otherwise known as 9425 87th Street, and PID 023975245 into the town of Esoy. And that the provincial ministry memorandum of proposed boundary extension 87th Street and Lakeshore Drive, 45th Street dated May 25th, 2021 be received. And that council hereby established the electoral response form to allow for multiple electoral responses that a deadline for receiving elected responses for submissions to the Director of Corporate Services is to be 4 p.m. on Monday, August 9th, 2021, and that the determination of the total number of electors of the town of Vesuvius to which the approval process applies is 4,313. Option 2, that council requests further changes to be made to the elector response forms and bring back a report to the next regular open meeting. Or 3, that the boundary extension be abandoned. And the recommendation by staff is that council adopt or move option 1.
Thank you. I don't think we're ever gonna ask you to do this again. And go through the electoral boundaries. I felt like clapping after you finished doing that. Well done. Councillor King and then Councillor Harvey.
That question, August 9th seems a long time away. Is that, sounds like too much time, or is that appropriate amount of time?
Because it's the second notice, so if we post next week, which would be the 30th, the second notice will go till July 7th, so that's 30 days after July 7th.
Okay. And then my second question, OIB supported this? Or is that,
We can speak to that if you wish. So as you'll recall, Councillor King, Mayor, and their council members, it's been going on for a little while. We started this process maybe 2 years ago this fall. And so with the resolutions of council that we look at both of these boundary extension proposals at the same time, and the referral packages were sent out to affected parties. And then a package was put together with all the information forwarded to the province. The province then asked for us to go out and reach back out to individual nations, Silk Nation, Penticton Indian Band, Astuce Indian Band again, which we did do, and then COVID hit, and then everything kind of slowed down. And so we've done our due diligence, sent it back to the province. And now the province, after they receive, they do their own referral. So we are waiting again for a period of 60 days while the province did their referral. And to the best of my knowledge, they have not received any comments opposed.
so are we getting ahead of ourselves then?
No. No, we're doing exactly what the province has told us to do in the order in which they've told us to do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Harvey.
Oh, you're on
You're on
mute,
mute.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So at the top of page 2 of the report, it indicates correspondence from 4 of the 5 property owners on 87th are not in favor of their properties being annexed. And yet the recommendation is to proceed to apply to have them annexed anyway. So how do we square that?
If I may, thank you, Councillor Harvey, that's a very good question. So interestingly enough, they are receiving water services from our community right now, and our go-to moving forward is that anybody requesting to provide services, you'll recall with the La Rose Winery boundary extension request, anytime somebody requests services from us, we now look to the boundary extension process. So at one point, when we first started the process, 2 of those 4 property owners were in favor. So when we first started the process, they've since changed hands. 2 or 3 of the properties have changed hands. I think 3 of them. So it's our recommendation that we proceed and have the province make that decision.
So
Just,
it is possible with doing an AAP process that people could go in and say, no, we've read this and we don't agree that we should
Thank you.
proceed, right?
yes, and also just because even if we had a AAP process that recommended that it be approved, the province will still take into consideration all the comments received, whether they be from the property owners or through the AAP process or any other information that they receive. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the province is going to support the request.
That answer your question, Councillor Harvey?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the So would someone like to make a motion or recommend one of the options here, Counselor King?
I'll move option one.
You're not going to read it for us. are you?
Ms. Nelson would read it for us.
Please,
No, thank you.
Randy likes to read it.
is there someone who'd like to make us have that seconded? Thank you, Counselor Rose. Any other comments? All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, next is general. Okay, general net payroll and Sunbowl Arena financial accounts. So to report on expenditures from accounts payable and payroll information account for the receiver information purposes. General Sunbowl Arena cash requirements and net payroll accounts to June the 22nd, 2021 represent balances in the following funds in the amount of general cash, $238,453.18. Sunbowl cash requirements, $4,116.79. And net payroll accounts, $98,020.85. The options are for us to receive those for information purposes or to request additional information.
Move option.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rhodes, seconding that, all in favor. Thank you, everyone. Next is a report from Ms. McKay on a zoning amendment bylaw or up at Dividend Ridge.
Thank you, Mayor McCordock. Just gets to the beginning of my report here.
Okay.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to request that council consider zoning amendment by the number 1085.135/2021, which is attached to the report. The bylaw, if adopted, would allow for a strata lot subdivision with a mix of single family and two family dwellings. The property that's actually now owned by Fraser Creek Developments Limited. So at the time of writing of this report, the owner was Astuce Dividend Ridge. They've since purchased the property. It's now owned by the applicant. So the applicant is proposing to develop the site with a mix of single family homes and two family residential dwellings within a strata development. Subject property is 2.89 hectares in size. And is accessed directly from Olympic View Drive. Due to the topography of the site, staff are supportive of strata development of this property. And I'll discuss that further in the report. And then there's a map coming around that's just a roll up of attachment 5. So for anybody watching or Councillor Harvey, for your information, that's just attachment number 5 so that I can speak to it and you can read a little better and you can of course increase the size on your screen at home. So the proposed strata development would be required to comply with the town subdivision and development servicing bylaw. Now staff has been working on a previous proposal for this site, and operational services staff and the town's engineer have reviewed the draft servicing plans, and we're pretty much in agreement that the servicing plans meet our requirements. So the draft subdivision plan, again, attachment 4 indicates the 3 housing forms being proposed. Okay, so that's actually the one I just handed out to. The yellow are the single family homes, which we're really in favor of this new layout because the single family homes will be adjacent to existing single family homes in the Dividend Ridge neighborhood. So there'll be a nice transition into the strata. And then again, you move into the blue are the walk-up basements, walk-up duplex units, and then the pink are the walk-out basement units. So we feel that this proposed mix of housing forms will add to the much needed housing stock in the town. But the zoning amendment is required as the property is currently zoned for single family homes or R1. The R3 low density residential zone allows for single family dwellings on properties with a minimum lot size of 557 square meters and two family dwellings, or as we call them duplexes, on properties with a minimum lot size of 835 square meters. With respect to the OCP, the subject property is designated medium density in the OCP, and that is in conformance with the policies of that section. Further support for the development in this area can be found in section 8.4 of the OCP, which directs that new growth areas will only be created to accommodate realistic projections of land needs that exceed the capacity of existing urban areas. That is, outward expansion will be directed to hillside areas outside the ALR as much as possible, and potential urban use of ALR lands will be limited to meeting priority needs. That being said, directing development to the hillsides does result in the development of lands with steep slopes and possible unstable areas. The developable area of the subject property is at the toe of a steep slope. In addition, the lands to the east slope steeply down to the homes on the west side of Fairwinds Drive. Now, staff did receive a previous development proposal, which I already mentioned, for single-family homes, at which time a geotechnical assessment of the area was requested. Following a review of the geotechnical report and the engineer's recommendations to mitigate any concerns related to rockfall, the approving officer advised the developer to submit their proposal as a strata development. So back when I was freshy here, this was on my desk and I said it's a great looking proposal. However, we really don't want those rockfall areas. So what we advised at that time was that we would consider the areas as strata development. So that proposal, that a little plan that came around for you there, if you'll notice, there's those black, big red circles. Those red circles show the area that they've identified, which be sort of a rock protection area, rockfall ditch, and a lock block wall. And in fact, there's an existing rock catchment area there now. And there's been very little activity in the area, very little is actually landed in there. Nevertheless, we felt that if it's going to be a subdivision, that those areas were for potential rockfall and would, you know, maybe maintenance over time to take the rocks out of the ditch should be the responsibility of the strata rather than the town of Sis. So, briefly then, with respect to hillside development, a hillside development permit area is applicable to any proposed development potentially impacting areas with a slope of in excess of 50%. Such a development permit addressing slope stability and possible mitigation to the steep slopes will be a requirement of the subdivision process. So staff is of the opinion that the proposed development is in keeping with the spirit of the OCP and that the new subdivision will contribute to much needed housing stock within our community. Implications to the community: the proposed amendment and subsequent started subdivision will enable additional housing for our community. Following a successful rezoning process, subdivision process would follow, inclusive of the development permit for steep slopes. The two-family dwellings do not require formal character development permit. However, the applicant is supportive of working with the town to ensure the character of the neighborhood is maintained. To that end, they're happy to provide some facades for you, and we can, we'll bring that forward at the public hearing meeting. There are no impacts to the town's budget associated with this report. Again, should first and second reading be granted, staff would schedule a public hearing in late July when you can reconvene. And sustainability, the proposed amendment is consistent with the town's approach to sustainability as the area is serviced and slated for future development. Options before council, option 1 and 2 parts. A, council approves the application, and 1B, council grants first and second reading to zoning amendment by number 1085.13, 135, 2021. Option 2, council denies the application. Option 3, council requests any additional information before proceeding forward. And staff are recommending option 1 and 2 parts. Thank you, Mayor McCormick.
Thank you very much, Councilor King.
Thank you. Can you explain to me what a walk-in and a walk-out is, duplex?
Okay, I'd be happy to do that, Councilor King. So a walk-in is you walk in, and then you walk up to the next floor. So you walk in, you drive your car in, and you go in, maybe there's a rec room or a bedroom and a bathroom, and then you walk upstairs to the main floor.
Okay,
And a walkout basement is you drive in, and you walk in, and then maybe you walk downstairs to your basement where it walks out into your backyard.
okay. And one other question, is there any concern about blasting up there? I mean, you're talking a mountain of rock.
And blasting in what regards, when they're doing the construction?
Yes,
So if I may, for example, right now, we're looking at a development at the top of Dividend Ridge. You'll recall that we previously looked at duplexes at that site. And they have taken out a soil removal permit within which we require geotechnical reports, engineer reports, reports on how they're gonna mitigate any concerns with respect to blasting. We would do the same with this project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I went up there at lunchtime because, to have a look. I had no clue that the property even existed back there. So it was interesting once I, realized where it was. So council, go ahead, Councilor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor McCord. Is the developer receptive to the strata proposal?
Yes,
Requirement?
Yes.
There's no.
there's no question about it.
And who owns the property where the rocks are that may fall that we're going to protect?
They will. The property owner.
Okay, so we're gonna build a catchment.
No, we're not building anything.
Oh, pardon me. Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
They're going to do that to mitigate the possibility of rocks falling. I'm wondering who owns the property where the rocks are that may fall.
The Crown.
And they would have no responsibility.
Correct. So just so you know, if you look up to the green areas, which is the other reason that I had Amy bring these over, those green areas are areas that have already been developed as rockfall protection areas and collection areas. So that's already taken place. So there's been quite a bit of work done up there to prevent any further rock from coming down. And as I say, as a result of the work that's already been done, there's been very little rock come down, and what has come down has been very, like maybe a softball size. And it has landed in the ditch for which it was built, the purpose for which it was built. So it looks to me that it's functioning the way it's supposed to function. Additional protection, of course, would be the rockfall fence and the rockfall block wall, and then the catchment area would be increased.
So the yellow area in there, that looks like it's rocks that need to be removed.
That's correct. So those areas, that would have to be removed, and permission would have to be granted from the ministry, from the Crown, in order to remove those rocks, and that's already been discussed as part of this, this geotechnical report that was previously prepared, those conversations, and there's detail about it in the full report.
Council, let's go ahead, Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Mayor. We're up, I would move option 1A.
Does 1A and 1B go together, or do they have to be done
Two
separately?
separate.
Separately, okay, 1A, you approve the application, is there better than that? Is there, all in favor of that? Okay, how about 1B? So 1B? Councilor King, you second that? Any concerns about that one? No, I don't think you don't have your hand up, Councilor Harvey? No, okay.
So Councilor Rose moved and Councilor King seconded this.
Yes.
motion. Okay, thank you.
That we grant first and second readings, then you're going to come back with when the public hearing is, because we don't have another meeting for a month, and I'm just wondering.
Yes, that's correct. We had tentatively looked at the date of July 22nd. Is that correct? Mrs. Wilson? No, but
You're gonna do it the same week as the scheduled meeting, which would be the 28th, which is a Wednesday.
Yeah.
that's correct.
So it will be the 28th then?
Yes.
But this hasn't been written into the report, so I'm asking.
No,
So
and
we gotta get the notices prepared and out. There's gonna be
And then you will
delivery
let us
to
know.
adjacent properties as well.
that's correct.
Okay. Did we vote on that?
No,
Second? All right, so all in favor of 1B? Okay, thank you very much. That's done.
Thank you, and I'm just wondering if this would be a good time while I'm here, and this property is adjacent to Crown Land, if we talk about the questions with respect to trails.
Please do.
Is that okay, Council?
Yes, that is a question that we had
Suitable.
not part of the agenda.
Yeah,
but-
you got information. to
So,
provide.
no, you may have been receiving calls and questions about some activity going on up in that area, which I just wanted to let you know that we have responded to that. RCMP have responded to it, Conservation's responded to it. There has been quite a bit of activity. At one point, there was a traffic accessing through the subject property that we just discussed. The property owner has since cut off that access. So there has been individuals accessing that area. And they can do so at the south end rather, of Dividend Ridge. There's also been questions about the trails up at Strawberry Creek. And despite the fact that I've sent an email, left a message, and also texted with representatives of BC Parks, I've yet to get any confirmation that those trails are actually being decommissioned. So I'm not hearing anything yet, but as soon as I do, I'll prepare comments to see Chabot and Kearney's distribution. Is that fair enough?
Sure.
Yes, it is.
I have no idea what's going on there.
Well,
Your
you
worship.
know, we don't know, therefore we have to wait till we get something official.
Well, there's quite a bit going on up there, I can assure you. Now, what's happened is there was one parcel in the middle of all that crown land that was actually is a deeded parcel. And there has been, somebody has purchased it and they've been accessing it through the crown land and building a road to it. So there's been a lot of activity. So any decommissioning of trails may not actually be BC Parks that's doing it. I know that there's been some question about this person decommissioning other trails because they don't want people accessing their private property. It's all hearsay and.
All right, so we don't have anything definitive to report, therefore we will wait until we get some clear answers.
Correct.
Great, thank you very much. Go
Is
ahead.
that little farmland that's up there,
Oh, jeez.
Ms. McCabe? Like there's a little valley up there, like for cows or whatever? You know, right?
I think only a portion of it is flat. I think much of it is quite steep.
No, I know, but you can go into like, there's more about 5 acres, like a.
I would have to look at aerial photographs to be sure.
All right, thank you. We will move on to. Now we're on to the zoning bylaw amendment, consideration of third reading, recreational vehicle definition. Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna have to recuse
Yes,
myself
thank you.
because I'm going to be
Go ahead. Thank you.
strong.
You gotta stand outside.
And
Not
not,
In the
really.
same.
not under the tree,
I'm going.
And no water.
of course.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Recorda. So, council will recall that we just had a public hearing on this particular report and proposed amendments to the definition section of the zoning bylaw. So a little bit of background for you, for those maybe that are watching at home that have not kept apprised of this. Now, staff in the planning development department continue to receive inquiries about the placement of park malls on properties within the C5 recreation vehicle park campground zone and within the C4 highway commercial zone. Both of these zones were intended to provide for tourist accommodation on a seasonal or temporary basis. They're not intended to provide year-round accommodation or the placement of permanent or semi-permanent units on individual RV sites. Pardon me, because there's uncertainty about whether or not the definition of recreational vehicle in the zoning bylaw includes or excludes park malls or park mall RVs, many sites in town that were intended to provide commercial tourist accommodations have become residential uses not contemplated or authorized in the zoning bylaw and are now year-round housing for residents, owners, and occupiers. It was believed that the zoning amendment to the definition of recreational vehicle would prevent the placement of further park malls and limit potential use, contrary to the intent of those locations zoning designations. So overview, the C5 zone was specifically intended to accommodate recreation vehicle parks and campgrounds. The definition, which is below, which is from the zoning bylaw, illustrates the point that the uses of these sites were intended to be temporary or seasonal. That is to say, a recreational vehicle park means a parcel of land designed, developed, maintained, and capable of providing accommodation on a temporary or seasonal basis for recreational vehicles. As noted, staff also received inquiries about the redevelopment of some of the older hotels and motels in Osiris. These sites are currently zoned C4 highway commercial. The C4 zone also allows for campgrounds. And the campground definition is as follows. Campground means a facility intended for the temporary accommodation of travelers in recreational vehicles or tents, but specifically excludes a mobile home park. So developers and investors inquiring about the C4 zone properties are asking specifically about how to move forward with a strata lot campground similar in nature to those operating throughout the community. Staff note that the stratification or shared ownership models currently in place in some of these existing recreational vehicle parks has, in some cases, resulted in year-round occupancy contrary to zoning. It's also resulted in reduced availability for commercial occupancy for visitors to our communities. So the current definition of recreational vehicle park does not mention park miles. It is as follows. Recreational vehicle means a vehicle capable of being used as a temporary accommodation for travel or recreational purposes, including a motorhome, truck camper, fifth wheel trailer, camper trailer, and tent trailer. Staff are also having difficulty regulating the siting and addressing inappropriate separation between all recreational units. In some cases, RVs, fifth wheels, park models, and motorhomes have been added onto with decks and additions, such that there remains very little space for parking on individual sites. It can also result in difficulty for emergency vehicles. Most recently, we've determined that in some cases, site owners have now applied for the BC homeowner grant for their recreational vehicle. So, public hearing. The minutes of the public hearing held on May 18th, 2021 are attached to this report. The town received over 100 written submissions, all opposed to the amending bylaw. Members of the public who spoke at the hearing, that is via the online platform, were also opposed to the bylaw. Primary concerns raised by participants related to the following. Number one, there's been inconsistent interpretation by town staff over the years with respect to the interpretation of the zoning bylaw as it relates to the placement of park miles in the recreational vehicle parks. For example, some owners of RV spaces were advised that no permit was required for the placement of a park mile. At other times, owners were required to secure a siting permit from the building inspector. Number two, RV parks within the town each have their own stipulated rules, regulations, and ownership models. This has further exacerbated the challenge for the town to ensure the parks are maintained, at least in part, for providing tourist accommodation space. Now, as noted above, the RV parks currently operating in town function under various ownership models. So I thought I'd just give you a snippet of what that actually means. For example, the Oasis RV Resort functions under a shared ownership model. As pointed out during the public hearing, the owners of those sites at the park purchased their share with an understanding that park miles were a permitted use. Comments received at the public hearing emphasized that many owners have no intention of making their sites available for the traveling public now or maybe never did. B, Walton's Lakefront RV Resort is a strata RV park whose strata bylaws specifically prohibit the placement of park miles on individual sites. They also stipulate that the amount of time individual site owners are permitted to occupy their sites through the summer months. And then there's the Island View Resort, which is also a strata RV park, which is occupied by a variety of recreational vehicles, inclusive of park models. To ensure that a portion of the strata lots were made available to the traveling public during the summer months, the town required a Section 219 restrictive covenant to be placed on the title of a portion of the strata lots. Some of the lots were identified as having no owner occupancy restrictions. Over time, this has been interpreted as meaning that a park model could be placed on the unrestricted lots. The covenant further states that the maximum stay in July and August is 21 days. Note that some site owners at Island View Resort do actually rent their sites out for tourists with or without their own recreational vehicles. And they actually do it at Walton's as well, just so you're aware of that. Paradise Park RV Resort was provided a specific zoning, that is R8 Recreational Vehicle Residential or Strata Resort. In the zoning bylaw, which was updated in 1998, now that zone implies that the use of a recreational vehicle for residential purposes is condoned. The location of recreation vehicles on strata lots was to be further regulated by town bylaws. However, no such bylaw was ever developed. A little bit of discussion here. Notwithstanding the fact that the C5 zone was intended to provide for seasonal commercial accommodation on a temporary basis. It is clear that each of the RV parks operating under this zoning have gradually developed into a variety of seasonal uses, including some purely residential use. As we continue to review on the ways these parks have been developed and governed, it becomes clear that a one-size-fits-all approach to regulating the uses within the parks and addressing the issues of concern is not going to resolve the issues. A comprehensive approach, including a detailed examination of each site thereon, and the uses thereon rather, and their histories, is needed to ensure that the spirit of the OCP and zoning bylaw is realized. So implications are as follows for the community. Again, consistent, clear, and effective regulations are the cornerstone of transparent governance and overall community health. Organizationally, staff in our planning and development department benefit from having clearly defined objectives and direction in the bylaws they refer to. The proposed update to the zoning bylaw has no implications for the budget. A public hearing, again, was held on May 18th. With respect to sustainability, long-term sustainability of our community and the surrounding area is achieved through good planning practices that are proactive. So the recommendation before council today, given the complexity of the situation with respect to the various recreational vehicle sites, their histories, and the uses therein, it is clear that this issue is best approached through a comprehensive planning program. The amount of concern and issues to be resolved to effectively satisfy all parties with an interest in the matter as expressed at the public hearing needs to be considered by council with respect to either moving forward with the bylaw amendment or defeating it at third reading. While the proposed bylaw would prevent further park miles being located on these sites, it would not address the expressed concerns, expectations, and assumed rights of many based on past practice, observations, and either authorized or unauthorized deviations from a strict interpretation of zone regulations. If adopted, the bylaw could also create a degree of uncertainty with respect to the status of existing permitted and unpermitted park malls on these sites. Given the foregoing and the views expressed at the public hearing, it is recommended that council defeat the bylaw at third reading and these sites and uses thereon be reviewed in a comprehensive manner as part of the upcoming zoning bylaw review. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. McKay. So, Councillor Rhodes.
Oh, thank you, Member Corda. So
Had your hand up, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I thought you were gonna come, I just didn't know. Sorry. So if we move forward with the staff recommendation on this matter, that will put us back to where we were before we started, correct? And leave many of the residents with the uncertainty about what we're going to do in the future. Around this particular table, I think we have an understanding that we will move forward, you know, in a manner that is probably the way we should move forward with it. But that could take a long time. And as we were made abundantly clear during the public hearing, there are many people that are in transition right now. A lot of people that are halfway there, a quarter of the way there, and they don't really know what to do. And I think in good faith, they probably want to do the right thing at the end of the day. What happened in the past, and I know this is always a ridiculous comment, we can't change what happens, but we certainly can change what's going to happen from this day onwards. And my recommendation is to look at a couple of things, and I don't even know if they're legal. The first one that I would like to see done is a zone specific set of bylaws that are unique for each one of those individual parks. And the second thing that I would like to see done is some representation from the individual parks to help us work through that process. Now, I understand as well as anybody that's kind of an unusual way of crafting bylaws, but this is a pretty unique and unusual situation that we have on our plate right now. And I think it's clear to everybody that I've talked to that meaningful progress needs to be made so that people are clearly, first off, sensitive to their needs, sensitive to the town needs, and clearly defined so that it's understandable when it's crafted and 100 years down the road and every moment in between. So
I get it. So my thinking is that what we should do is we've been asked to provide third reading. So we should move this bylaw to third reading and see where that gets us, either defeat it or not. And then we can look at next steps, because I totally agree with Councillor Rhodes. There are some people that are kind of stuck in the middle, and that would likely make it very difficult for you, because they'd be phoning you saying, I've already done this and this and this, now what do I do? So is there something more that we can provide? Or do we have to wait till the zoning bylaw is looked at? And can it
I
be done
appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor McCarthy, and thank you for your comments, Councillor Rhodes. It would be my intent to move forward with this, well, we are intending to move forward this fall with the new zoning bylaw. And if nothing else, I anticipate a lot of participation on behalf of persons living in those particular areas to which this bylaw would affect. And as I mentioned previously and in this report, I think the answer is going to come in the way of zoning that's more reflective of what those maybe uses have morphed into and what they'd like to see there in the future. I don't necessarily want to lose sight of the fact that, they were intended to provide some form of tourist accommodation, so I'm not necessarily sure that a residential zone for each of those parks would be the answer, but I think it's clear that you could it's quite likely that there would be a different zoning for some of those parks for sure.
And what about the ones that are C4 zoned? Because I know there are some properties in question right now. If, would you tell them the same thing? We are going through a zoning bylaw, and we will deal with them at the same time, or how does that, is that different than the C5?
So to be clear on those development proposals under the C4 zone, what I would do is not allow a strata subdivision in the C4 zone. If someone were to come forward and want to develop a campground, for example, we would not look for that to happen in those zones at this time. Because it seems to be in the stratas and the shared ownerships where, and rightfully so, I understand that people own their recreational vehicle site and they want to do what they want to do. And I can certainly understand that. At the particular juncture in time, the amount of money that is being asked for those properties that are for sale, the C4, it's unlikely that any existing structures would be removed. They would be looking to add some of these units on there. So I'm not too concerned about those at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess we kind of end up in a catch-22 if this bylaw moves forward and happens to get defeated, like Councillor Rhodes said. I guess there's a few people kind of in limbo, and they just go ahead and put a park model on the property and then see what happens when we rezone.
Well, that's a good question, Councillor King. So as I mentioned previously, they're going back and looking at the history of each of these three parks, let's just say, on Lakeshore Drive. The first being the Oasis. There is evidence to support the fact that they were advised when that shared ownership model was created, that they were advised that a park model was a permitted use. So I think that might be a little difficult to suggest otherwise on that particular, in that particular park. Although I would say that is the only one of the three upon which I could find any evidence that they were advised that park models were permitted use.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess we're not going to micromanage necessarily, but moving over to one of the other parks, and I buy a lot and I'll just go put a park model on because there's nothing saying I can't.
So I can now, so the Walton's has a strict strata bylaw that says no park malls. So that leads us to the Island View property. Island View has a stipulation that you have to have approval from the strata to have a park mall sited there.
And
To date, the strata is not.
I'm just kind of putting.
I'm just saying, all I can let you know is what's happened to date. And what's happened to date is, those persons that have approached the strata have not gotten strata approval to put a park mall on their property.
Is that just recently?
The last year at least, I'd say. Maybe a little bit less than a year.
And we are not close to the Strata Council.
I can't speak to
Hey, I'm like
that.
playing the devil's advocate. No, I think what
No,
you're
just-
suggesting is a great idea.
And thank you, Councillor King, and I'm more than happy, as Councillor Rhodes points out, to approach Oasis, for example, and have a conversation with the members of that strata group, or rather shared interest group, and talk to them about what they think might be solutions moving forward with our new zoning bylaw. I'm more than happy to do that with each of the parks.
And Ms. McKay, I thank you for going through each of the parks and explaining what they are allowed and what they're not allowed, because it does,
Right.
it does sort of suggest that absolutely we need to have these people involved in the zoning. And if it means there's different zonings on different
Right.
properties, then maybe that's something we need to consider as well.
Right.
Councillor Harvey?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, yeah, I absolutely support the third reading be defeated. But I would also, just with respect to Oasis, that seems to be the problem spot, really. And given Director McKay's comments that there's some evidence that town has in the past accepted park models as a permitted use, that there's a basis to proceed independently of the zoning bylaw review, which could take a long time, like the OCP has. And so I would suggest that that staff seek a legal opinion on that previous evidence of what town said was okay, and are we stuck with it, broadly speaking, at that particular park? And if so, tell them to go ahead and give building permits where they apply for them.
Just on that park you're suggesting, not the other ones.
Just on that park. I mean, like the way that the report gives, that's a very different park than the other three. In particular, because Miller applied, it's been my notes from the town meeting, he applied to the town to change from campground to the current model, and it was approved. And Director McKay's comments are there's some evidence to support that, and further that to support the placement of park models. Are we going to try and get out from underneath that? I mean, are we bound to that? And that's why I say, we should seek perhaps a legal opinion immediately, and depending on the outcome, go to them. And this isn't about the zoning bylaw review. It's not. It's about the current use. And if people have got their park model on order, and the answer is they are allowed to put it there, we should tell them that.
Thank you. So we're back to it's been recommended, we need to have it moved and seconded, that the zoning amendment bylaw 1085-134-2021 be read a third time. So you're going to move that and second it. All right, so
Excuse me, the recommendation is that council defeat the bylaw at third reading.
That's exactly right. That's what we are doing. So that was recommended. So what we can do now is vote against that. That's how you would defeat this, Councillor Harvey.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's been moved and seconded that we read it a third time. All in favor? Against? Okay, so that was defeated. Now, thank you. Mrs. Hilson, do we now go on to, okay, so the next motion should be that the zoning bylaw amendment 1085.134/2021 be abandoned. And that would be the next motion. Is there someone who would like to make that? Thank you, Councillor King, Councillor Rhodes. All in favor? Thank you. So, Ms. McKay, do we need another motion here that to address Councillor Harvey's concern? Or,
Thank you, Mayor McCarthy. I mean, I could take it as a direction to staff, or if you want it more formal, that would be a motion that staff be directed to work with that particular park, Oasis, and consideration be given to coming forward to council with the zoning amendment in advance of the review of the zoning bylaw.
I
See, Chabot, something to that effect.
I also think we
If
need
you
to
have
push.
time in the park schedule to meet a commitment like that, then yeah. My concern is exactly what some council expressed, is that park model is gonna start rolling.
Well, there definitely, if I may, Mayor McCormick, they'll be rolling into that park.
Yes,
For sure. Now, the interesting thing, if I may go back, 1998, when the zoning bylaw was adopted, there was also comments, if you look further in that section of the zoning bylaw, that state that that the siting be such that it would be restricted through other bylaws. Those other bylaws were never developed. And those
That's
other,
where we are today.
and that's exactly where we are now. And those other bylaws were supposed to be campground bylaws or recreation vehicle park bylaws, which would then further dictate, you know, the placement of park malls and the additions thereto, and the number of parking requirements and the siting between additions and other park malls or other uses, such that you could mitigate any concerns with respect to emergency access and or fire. So that never happened.
Yeah.
So that could be done on an individual basis for each of those zones.
Councillor Rhodes was first, and then you, okay, Councillor Rhodes, did you have a suggestion?
Yes, thanks, Madam Cora. Councillor Harvey's recommendation of getting a legal opinion rings very clear with me. I think it's an excellent suggestion, and I think it should be our next step. Because we don't want to move forward and do something wrong that's going to violate something that's in place right now. And it may give us some meaningful guidance to move forward in the future as well.
Just with Oasis, or you talk about all of it?
Well, I think a legal opinion could be a blanket coverage for it, though, could it not? I mean, to use Councillor King's, we don't want to micromanage this, but we don't want to miss out. We don't want to present an opportunity for us, council and staff, to make a mistake, a legal mistake. And this may clarify it, and it looks like I'm bringing up a sensitive matter.
Well, Elizabeth, it's, it was the coming spring season, and what we sensed was forthcoming a number of people with intent to locate park models on sites that weren't necessarily zoned for residential occupancy, and seeing the turnover in those sites becoming full-time year-round residency, including people applying for homeowner grants, which was never the intention behind these zones. So we did seek legal advice as to whether or not the definition of a recreational vehicle allowed us to prohibit the placement of park models on these zone sites. And that advice was that it was inconclusive, that it was unclear, and that past practice of the town and of those with an interest in these sites muddied the waters to the point where we didn't know. So this was the simplest solution to stemming the tide of park model conversions in these parks. So we in effect did have legal advice, but not particular to one over another, to the broader question. And it led us to where we find ourselves today, being no further along with clarity. I wouldn't want to single one out over another. Just seems to be not the way to go.
So could you suggest then how we should move forward on this? Have you got a
My
suggestion?
belief was that we get going on this as soon as we can. Let's get the OCP updated. Let's move into the zoning amendment bylaw. Let's make this a special study area of zoning. What do we want to achieve through these sites? What's the intention of council with these sites, and what do they need to become? And just get on with that, and don't do something over here separate from that, just in respect of our really limited resources.
But the concern is, as we've said, people are halfway through the process of having their park model delivered. Do we turn a blind eye? Do we say, no, hang on, hold on until we go through the zoning? Well, how do we deal with that part?
Told that we don't require permits for placement of a park model.
Right, so thank you, Sue Chabot and Mayor McCordoff. As I said, there is evidence to support the fact that the town agreed to park malls as a recreational vehicle in the Oasis campsite only.
Yeah.
So that's the only one I can find evidence to that effect.
Okay, so then it makes sense to go ahead with that, with Oasis only and allow that to continue. What do we do with the other parks, and are they gonna be upset?
Well, it isn't an issue on Walton's because their straddle bylaws prohibit it, and it's something they really don't want to see there. Ever, at least not
It's
under
Island
these
View.
current straddle bylaws. Island View has that covenant on it that has the stars, that says there's an unrestricted use, which over time, that's been led to believe that allows for the placement of park malls. In my interpretation of that covenant is no such thing. I think unrestricted use meant you didn't have to vacate during the summer or let your property up for rent. It had nothing to do with what kind of recreational vehicle you had on it. And as I say, right now, the strata isn't approving or make, any recreational or any park malls being on those sites. And as I understand it, the ones with the stars, the unrestricted ones already have park malls on them.
Yeah, others
So-
are desirous of doing the same.
Right, and I don't think that the strata is gonna move forward with that. I think that we would have grounds to say no in that particular case, because again, I can find no evidence to support the fact that the Oasis was formed at a time when it was understood that a park mall was allowable use.
So in other words, you're okay with, or you're agreeable that we just not deal with these specific issues and just let the zoning bylaw with help from the parks, who they would like your input, obviously. And is that something that can be done quickly enough so that we don't have these people in limbo? I know.
I would support Sarah Chabot's comment that we move swiftly through the OCP approval process and that the director of planning finish preparing the RP, which I'm doing right now for the zoning bylaw update.
Okay,
We're currently waiting to find out if we're successful in achieving a grant to further support the zoning update. So that's,
okay. Counselor King and then Counselor Harvey.
I definitely think we gotta separate it. I can concur, you can speed up the process for the zoning. But I guess I relate back to Oasis, 70% of their homes already have homes on them, lots. My understanding, they don't let anybody from the outside stay there for the last few years. Everybody that doesn't have a park model has a trailer on it, my understanding. So I have no problem kind of separating it as you change the bylaw to actually allow them, because you already said we have a precedent set that we've allowed them before. So to me, it's just like, let them continue on if they choose to for that particular site, or you work on the bylaw, because that could be 3-4 months, and that's fast.
yes, and I think if I may, Counselor King, the challenge is, it would be inappropriate to give, let's say, a residential zoning to property that's occupied by vehicles, recreational vehicles and park malls. They're not supposed to be residential, they're supposed to be for temporary accommodation. So you still end up in a situation where you have to be, has to be crafted very carefully. And while it may not be a commercial, it's still meant for seasonal use, I guess would be,
So anyhow, we'll just have people put them on as we work on the bylaw,
with a citing
what we're on.
permit.
right?
Which is what has happened previously,
Okay.
on and off over the years, depending on who the building inspector was. They're being granted citing permits and not building permits.
Okay, so they get a citing permit, which we would okay most likely.
And the purpose of the citing permit was to ensure that it was placed in such a way on that property that it's still allowed for parking on the said, lot.
Counselor Harvey.
Okay, so that's interesting, that this latest comment, would those who are in limbo get a citing permit if they came into your office tomorrow?
I think as CO Chabot pointed out, and in our conversations with the lawyer, we would be, and again, a review of the history of that particular site and the way that particular park was developed, it would be difficult to us not grant them a citing permit.
Okay, so would you grant a citing permit tomorrow?
Well, I'm not the building inspector, but I could advise the building inspector to do so.
Okay, so, I mean, I was gonna move that you go for a legal opinion based on the evidence that you've got, but it sounds like that might not be necessary if and only if a citing permit were to be granted if somebody came in tomorrow.
Just,
Is the
Right,
citing
How would you
permit,
refuse one?
that's my point, is that based on the evidence that I've received and gone through the file, and believe me, the files are thicker than from my shoes to the top of this desk, I am not kidding you. It took days and days to wade through them, or more like nights and nights,
So-
but nevertheless, it's done now.
what
And-
about citing something and then coming in and asking to add on a deck or
Okay.
some garage? Is that's?
Thank you,
different?
Mayor McCarthy. I'm very glad that you asked that question. The building inspector says you cannot grant a building permit to add anything onto a recreational vehicle, inclusive of a park model. So that he would not issue a building permit regardless of whether or not he issued a citing permit for the placement of a park model on those sites. He will not issue a building permit.
To add on something. And
Correct.
you know what, that may be a bit of a compromise then too, because if that's the case and somebody's planning to put in a park model and they get a citing permit, then we say, until we are not going further with anything, building permits, or anything like that, until we've gone
Right.
through this next
Right.
section.
And
That
if-
makes sense to me.
And just to clarify, the building inspector is very adamant about this. It doesn't matter what the zoning is, you can't add on to a park model or a recreational vehicle. They were not built for that use. That's not to say that if it was okay with the siting or the setbacks, that you couldn't build a covered deck beside your park model,
Yes,
but which is different than adding on to or affixing to your park model.
thank you. You know,
See, it's
this
as
has
clear as
been
mud.
a very confusing issue. I absolutely appreciate what everybody, all staff have gone through. It's been very tricky, and Mrs. Hilson, it amazes me that she was able to get everybody back and forth on the meetings, take notes and take minutes and come up with this report. So thank you, because I mean, everybody has done an amazing job of trying to look at a very complicated issue. And I know it's not going to be easy. So are we good with where we're at, or do we need anything further? No? Are we okay with this? Can we, counsel? Can we go ahead, Counselor Harvey?
Well, I wonder if there shouldn't be some kind of communication.
Some kind of,
Communication to counsel for Oasis, for example, who's been writing us.
Do you not think they're all listening? I do.
They are.
Was their lawyer who reached out and asked for next
Yes,
step work?
that's correct.
We advised that we directed them to the agenda to read the report.
So
Yeah.
their lawyer has that information.
He has the report, sure, and he'll get the minutes, sure, but I don't know if the minutes, depending on, will they reflect that a citing permit would be permitted, but a building permit for an extension would not.
Thank you.
I just want to see that
I
frame.
agree with you. Let's make sure.
Thank you. Through the chair, I can certainly reach out to the representative, legal representative, and also the strata president to that effect. I can assure you they're well aware that they will not get a building permit, and they were aware of that before our conversations with respect to park mounds. But I can
If you
certainly
would
reach
please
out.
do that,
Yeah.
because if they're not listening to this, they might like to know what's happening.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, Councillor Harvey,
thank you.
thank you.
And thanks to
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks to-
That's taken a lot of work, totally understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go down to page 111, the Accessibility and Age Friendly Committee had their minutes on June the 3rd. Councillor King, have you got anything else to report on that, or?
No, I'd just like to make a couple points, kind of roundabout as my report, because I'm next on the agenda anyhow. I'd like to invite everybody down to Haynes Point this Saturday at 10 o'clock. There's a kayaking and trail ride. It's mainly for people that have a disability, showing how they can get in kayak and then travel around. They'd be excited to have a few more kayakers there. And Councillor Bennett mentioned he just bought one, so we can see them down there at 10 o'clock on Saturday.
Fall out of it.
There's
Wear a life jacket.
a moving that now has been placed down at Gyro Park. Again, it's for people in wheelchairs, so they can actually wheel right down into the lake, which is very exciting. I was down there the other day and had a look at it, and it goes right from the pavement right to the lake, so it's about 100 feet long and about 4 feet wide, so that's very exciting. The advisory committee is also talking about possibly, there's some type of golf cart, and my understanding, they had one here maybe 20, 30 years ago, where a person doesn't have legs per se that can sit in this cart, we'll move them up and he can actually hit the balls. And I guess it broke down years ago, so they're looking at some way of how maybe talking with the golf or a nonprofit organization to bring together to bring one of those carts to the community would be very beneficial for
I
people.
saw
from
one here,
outside.
there was one here a couple of years ago when they were
On
outside.
display. It was
Yeah,
on
on
display.
display. It was kind of interesting.
So that was very interesting to see. And the one other thing that Mr. Davis mentioned this morning about they're moving forward with a grant for Pioneer Parkway for a scented garden and a few other improvements around some of the other parks. So that's my report.
Thank you very much. That, there seems to be some pretty exciting things happening with that committee, so thank you. Good, are you moving the, that we receive that as information? Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Rhodes, all in favor? Thank you very much. Now, do we have time for a CAO report?
Your worship, I promise I'll be brief.
Oh,
We're on
yeah.
meeting, I've got items to get to.
You can say that.
Yes,
I know, I already am, and I can go on and on and on. Endlessly. I'll try to be quick. For myself, council will recall that I introduced our new fire chief, Corey Portmeyer, to council and the community. He's been with us since the 7th of June. Getting to know everybody, meeting the paid on call volunteer membership, the leadership of the department, community members, making his presence known, which is pretty good to see. I participated in interviews for a utility superintendent. Council will recall this is a elimination of the position of operational services manager and the creation of 2 different exempt positions. One, the public works manager position, and the other one, public works superintendent, I guess. And the other one is the public works, or the utility superintendent. We just hired an individual, Mike Lang. He'll join us on the 30th of August, so we're excited to see him come and work with that department to make things even better. We've been working on updates to our COVID-19 exposure control plan, which speaks to the measures in place at our facilities, our availability to the community. As council knows, we're in phase 2 right now. We have to review and update our plan to reflect the status of operations, and we'll have to do so again after the 1st of July, when hopefully we move into step 3 of the restart plan for the province. So we'll update council on that when we get things a little bit more set. Town hall, the office hours availability has been expanded, 9 AM till 4 PM. Most importantly, right now, people will be visiting us to pay their property tax and their utility bills. Unfortunately, the design of the building still only allows us to have one person in the lobby at a time. If we get busy and we start creating lineups, we'll look to establish another station for people to make payment outside the building. Because we're even moving into more open COVID, physical distancing and 2 meter separation is still required. So we'll keep you updated on that as well. As council knows, we've been working with Desert Park Exhibition Society. Director Davis and I had a presentation today at the committee of the whole, looking at their business plan and a discussion about renewal of a license to occupy the facility to ensure its continued operation. Been working with the Director of Operational Services and the Director of Planning and Development on crafting a legal agreement between the town and the Osoyoos Airport Development Society to see the expenditure of the funds they got under the COVID Emergency Relief Incentive Program for improvements out at the airport. Hope to be able to present them a draft of that agreement soon and commence those improvements there sometime in the near future. I reviewed a multi-year financial plan for the RCMP with Sergeant Payton, our Director of Finance. Really happy to see that he doesn't predict any acute need for additional members in the foreseeable future, trying to control the costs of the department. And hats off to him for assisting in that effort. He does a really good job of managing a small department with limited resources. And so he understands the impacts on our budget as well. And then we discussed a rural fire service expansion request with our new fire chief and our deputy fire chiefs. Plan is to meet with representatives of the Osoyoos Rural Fire Protection District in the coming weeks to further discuss that request and see how that might unfold, and if it would make sense for the town to expand the service area. And this is up Richter Pass Road in Capula Estates. We just need to take a look at what that would entail for us, access to water, etc. So that's me. Community services, as council knows, there are immunization clinics at the Sonora Center Mondays and Wednesdays. You can go to interiorhealth.ca, get information on how to register either for their first dose or their second dose of vaccine. We're moving into a lot of people getting their second doses in the community, so that's a good thing. Reopening plan has us restarting some of our recreational facilities. The plant at the Sun Bowl Arena will be getting turned on in the next couple of days in preparation for making ice for summer season at the arena there. So you'll expect to see a little bit more of that as well. Corporate services, the director has been busy mostly with HR matters and the alternative approval process, sorting it out. Nice to see those boundary extensions moving forward in a manner that hopefully we'll see them completed in the near future. Financial services mostly been about collecting taxes, informing taxpayers about the new homeowner grant process, whereby they need to call or log on to the provincial website to claim their homeowner grant. We don't any longer have a role in processing those. They just inform us of those that they've accepted. Fire department, as I mentioned, the fire chiefs met with emergency social services, RCMP, BC Emergency Health Services, and his interviews with the members. We had one of our members gone off to hazmat operations course the past weekend, and it will secure their 1001 firefighter 1 and 2 certification. We'll probably see the fire department coming forward to council recommending that the service level declaration be increased as we get more and more of our paid on call firefighters achieving their NFPA 1001 designation, we'd probably be able to return to the interior operations, but that would be pending the availability of members trained to provide that service. We're still not 100% certain on call out volumes and membership, but it's improving. So things are looking really good over there as well. Planning and development services, I mentioned the work on a project management agreement for the improvements at the airport. Staff are working on the provincial nominee program, which sees immigrants look at establishing new businesses in BC communities. And there's a process of interviews and determining fit and investment. So we'll bring forward a report to council in the fall to discuss options about continued enrollment in that. There are some online meetings for the OCP update process. People are encouraged to go to our website. There is a small survey that folks can complete. And we hope to have a public hearing in regards to that. Are we thinking the fall still or not end of July?
No, I think she was thinking about.
A little further back, so probably in the fall. Business license renewal is an amazingly small number of outstanding business license applications out of the total number. Still, bylaw things heat up literally, figuratively for bylaw. This time of year, motorhomes, travel trailers, boat trailers on town streets becomes more of an issue. And sightly properties become more of an issue, dealing with a few there. Trying to get voluntary compliance opposed to us sending in a contractor and giving you the bill. We got more seasonal workers in town, sleeping in parks and other open spaces, bumped into the Ridge. Certainly an expressed need for pickers for the fruit industry. This year, maybe even worse than last year. It was a shame to see crops go unharvested because of this. It might be a reality, but the director of planning and development has been participating on the town's behalf on the domestic agricultural workers task force. And I don't really know that there's any solutions for the immediate area in mind, again, for this area. Building permits continue to be issued. The council's been apprised of the numbers. In operational services, there's been, we had a visit from WorkSafe a while back, looking at our handling and procedures to deal with chlorine gas for both water and wastewater disinfection. They've got a number of recommendations that we'll have to make. Some of them have financial implications that we'll need to come and discuss with council. Busy season in parks and maintenance, and kudos to the crew. I think the town's looking really good and ready for a busy summer. Capital, lots of work going on there, Main Street design work, the community engagement survey about what they would like to see and feel is the right design for our Main Street of our community coming up. We've been working on the childcare expansion. And I guess they've been redesigning and rethinking improvements at Legion Beach. Plans to put a washroom there, plans to improve accessibility between the beach side and the splash park side. If you have a mobility disability, you're supposed to be able to cross the grass to get to the underpass. So design and implement a proper path there as well as part of that. And that's about it. Sorry for not being as great as I thought it.
Thank you, Mr. Chabot. Could we have a motion, please, to receive the CO report? Councillor Bennett, Councillor Rhodes, all in favor? Thank you. Council reports. Councillor King, did you have anything else to?
No, other than anybody have any questions?
We're good. I think you've done a great job on that. Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one thing, when I was by the airport, it looked like an international airport up there.
Yeah.
Oh,
10-seater plane, a 6-seater plane, and another plane there, and I've never seen that before. So
Jim's tired of them all. So we can have a look out his window.
So just 2 short reports. School district was just basically speaking about the success of the outdoor education program. And then mayor's vaccine call, Zoom call, that was 20 participants on June 17th. No active outbreaks, and we're going into phase 3 July 1st based on data and on. And That's it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to report this meeting.
Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor McCordhoff. I was able to attend the volunteer appreciation event that we had at a fountain outside of the building. Thank you to Sarah for organizing it. Thanks to Mayor McCordhoff for doing all the presentations and everything. But those two thank yous kind of pale in comparison to thanking the actual volunteers in our community. And really, I'm just running out of adjectives to explain how grateful I am for the work that they do in our community. And it's absolutely amazing the time and the volume of work that they do in our community and how much it really benefits not only the aesthetics of our community, but the quality of our life so often. And every one of them do it for free. There's no remuneration of any kind. And I don't know what else to say, but just thank you so much, and please continue on. The benefit to our community is amazing. So,
Thank you. Well said. Yes, that was, it was very nice that they were all able to come and receive their awards. So that was great. I had just had a couple things. I just want to remind you all to take the pledge, please. Make water work, especially if we're in a drought year. We need to be very careful. And makewaterwork.ca, go on there. It takes you 2 minutes, and we need to beat Armstrong. That's the main thing. No, I'm kidding. They've won it 4 times. So
actually, Oliver's in first place right now.
are they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we need to beat Oliver won it once too. July 1st. And certainly July 1st celebrations in Suyas are pale by comparison to what we've had for 72 years. There is no parade, no fireworks, no band shell entertainment, no beer gardens, no cherry pit spit or the cherry pie eating contest. The one thing that we are doing to is suggesting, of course, that people celebrate with their families and friends, close friends that they have, but decorate your home. We still need to have some thought of celebrating the day for all of the citizens of Canada. And the Festival Society has purchased from 10 very active businesses in this town, $100 gift cards. So we are supporting local, shopping local, and we have 5 awards to be given out to best decorated homes and 5 awards to be given out to best decorated businesses. So please do that. That's one way that you can celebrate and feel proud to be a Canadian and have a little bit of fun. I was, as I think I mentioned earlier, I was on the Water Stewardship Council meeting the other day with very interesting how we can protect against flooding and how different dams have put in and fish ladders, and there's positive things happening, but we need to certainly realize that the changing climate is going to bring it's going to make it difficult to deal with floods and droughts. So we need to do the best that we can on that, and I find it quite interesting. I was also on another workshop talking about UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous People, and Okanagan Lake, and looking at how we can deal with the lake, how we can protect the lake, how we can use the information and the rights of Indigenous people who've had thousands of years at looking at how they protect water and how they deal with it. And we're really trying to work together and use what is called a 2-eyed policy. So not only what we call the Western policy, but also the Indigenous policies and how we deal with any kind of water issues. And planning and understanding is so important. And the treaty TRC,
Truth and Reconciliation.
Yes, Truth and Reconciliation Committee. That was all part of it as well. So, and of course, volunteer awards were great. And I just wanted to say that last week we had 2 extra clinics down at Gyro for people to go down without making an appointment and have their first COVID shot. And several of them were able to get their second shot as well. And there were people there that would take their names off the list if they had an appointment further down the way. When I went down and talked to them, it was supposed to go from 11 o'clock till 6 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, they had run out of vaccines, which is a really good thing. Meant that lots of people were down there using the vaccines that were available. And the next day, I went down at the end of the day too, and it looked like they were, pretty well packed up and gone. Really appreciate that Interior Health has included these 2 mobile clinics to move around to the smaller communities, because it encourages people that maybe are a little bit nervous about going and getting a COVID shot or haven't got around to making an appointment, and that was available for them. So I heard lots of positive comments about it. And that's all I had for today. So I'm going to ask that we move into in camera, and that the public be excluded from the in-camera meeting pursuant to the following sections of the community charter. Section 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. And 92B, the consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and a provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party. So could I have a motion to move into, thank you, Councillor Rhodes, Councillor King.